Hello, I am Allison, and I am so happy and humbled and honored to be here speaking to and learning from this amazing community. I am the co-founder, along with Cassidy Brown, of We Are the XX. Cassidy was the badass woman who stepped on this stage and kicked off these talks last night. I have to say that it feels like such a privilege to be in this space, sharing with this community. I'm so happy that we decided to launch here as a part of the Downtown Project and with our lady loves from Catalyst Creative, Amanda and Stacy. The universe was definitely conspiring to bring us here to birth this baby because there's just a lot of synergy that's happening. And for many reasons, some of which I'll talk about in this conversation, I feel like this is exactly where I need to be. So We Are the XX is a journey that Cassie and I are embarking on and inviting all of you to be a part of. What we are aiming to do is to brand feminism for this generation, to take back the word feminist and have it fit us. When it comes to this particular subject, I have a lot of opinions. It's entangled, and it's loaded, and it's weighted, and it's beautiful, and it's timely, and it's necessary. This discussion about how we as emerging leaders and women figure out how to talk about who and what we are. But what I've come to know about experiences, or opinions rather, is that they stem from experiences. And so I want to take this time to share with you some of mine. And that was a difficult task because I feel like my whole world has kind of teed me up for this moment. And figuring out how to weave that together in a way that made sense and I could fit into like 15 minutes was challenging. But when I allowed myself to think about it, there were a few threads that sort of bubbled to the surface. One is that I have an absolute reverence for language, the power of words, my own voice, and effective communication. I'm a big believer in the triumph that comes from allowing yourself to be reborn. And I think community is important. I personally am invested in the global sisterhood, but also just believe in collectivity in general. And so I want to take you kind of on my story. I'm Canadian. I grew up in a very tiny rural town in southern Ontario. It's like less than 1,000 people. We didn't have a stoplight. We did have a gas station, so that somehow legitimized our town. I'm one of 5 kids. I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters, and I'm proud of all of these things. I really love that sense of belonging. I love where I come from. I embrace my family. I'm a proud person when it comes to all of that. That being said, I have spent a great deal of my adulthood learning how to let go of some of the mistruths that were passed on to me in my childhood. I grew up in a really conservative home. That was extremely religious, with a father who was a firm believer in an authoritarian rule. I went to a very conservative church, one in which women were not permitted to speak, and the female attribute that was most applauded was submissiveness. I just couldn't get down with these ideas, though, and the biggest reason was because I always had something to say. And in my home, I often played the role of taking the collective grievances of my siblings and my mother and bringing them up to my father. I was the one who was tapped to do that verbal 2-step, and this was often really scary, and it cost me dearly. I was constantly being punished for speaking out. My Dad was always telling me that I was mouthy, and I was a little lippy. But my greatest act of rebellion was using my voice. And you know, Maya Angelou says words are things, and I have to stand by that because in my experience, words, they have presence, they hold space, they can unite, they can divide, they can cut you, and they can heal you. These are some of the lessons I learned from my childhood. My upbringing and the things that come with it have become some of my most prized possessions and have informed most of my professional choices, from co-owning a spa and wellness center with my sister to working across several media platforms, from NBC News to Bravo to iVillage to The Week magazine to the current position I have in my day job, which is with Donna Karan. In this role, I am Donna Karan's personal assistant, but I also manage her communications. So a big part of my responsibility is to help this powerhouse own her words, find her words. I do this when she needs to write a speech, if we're blogging, social media, what have you. What I just think is kind of awesome because for a long time, I was told that, you know, I didn't have anything to say and that the words that I was using actually didn't matter in the conversations that were most prevalent. So I just think it's kind of interesting that this woman who is a powerhouse, you know, that we work together to help her share her story. And while we're on the subject of Mama DK, I just want to give a shout out to her boldness, because I do believe in the power of proximity. I believe in strong female leaders, and I believe that I'm in a master class designed by the universe to teach me a lot of things. So Donna, very early on in her career, she did something kind of unthinkable. She decided she was just going to cut the shoulders out of dresses. And she did this at a time when seemingly every other designer was sending women down the runway wearing men's suit with these inflated shoulder pads. And like, check out who wore her dress. Hillary Clinton and Candice Bergen and Liza Minnelli, women who I'm pretty sure knew that their shoulders were big enough already. She also, decades ago, designed a whole Donna Karan ad campaign around a female president with the belief that she was designing clothing for women who could and should be powerful leaders. And she has championed this intersection of fashion and philanthropy, another conversation that is very near and dear to my heart. So she's certainly done a lot to empower women, and I, for one, am really grateful that she has. I want to take a moment and just talk about this idea of being an empowered woman, because, of course, my professional story plays into this, and those choices that I've made matter, and they are a big part of who I am. But the path to get me here is also one of a lot of soul searching, and I stand here as a woman who has just come through her dark night of the soul, or her Saturn return, however you want to phrase it. So in my desire to right a great many perceived wrongs, and in my quest for independence, I made a choice around the age of 22 to marry my high school sweetheart. We had been together since we were 17, and he really is kind of the perfect guy in many ways. He is 6'4", he's smart, he's funny, he legitimately looks like Superman, I mean, mild resemblance. And, you know, I mean, you can see it a little bit, like even like the curl. He's an amazing person, and he loved the shit out of me. And we were married for 6 years, and then it kind of dawned on me in my soul-searching and self-inquiry and evolution that there was an untruth there, which was just that while there was a lot of love. I wasn't in love, and this amazing man, worthy of great love, felt like a brother. And so, a little over a year ago, we separated, and we are now working out the final details of our divorce. And again, ours is not a story of lack of love, rather of lack of knowing, mostly me not knowing me. And so I've been on this incredibly riveting ride where I have felt the tormenting of my soul. I have felt really vulnerable. And I have felt the uprising of something incredibly precious, which is my raw, authentic, and naked self. All of these things are incredibly important, of course, and have changed who I am, but they also brought me to another huge lesson. Somewhere along the line, I got it in my head that to be strong, I needed to be fiercely independent. And what happened over the last year when I found myself broken open and in a million pieces is that it became really apparent I couldn't do it alone. And so I stand here feeling very whole because of the people who stepped in and loved me anyway. What I learned from that was that there's power in camaraderie, there's power in community, and that I actually didn't want to be alone on an island only big enough for one. So, look at us. We have X cups. It's really great for me to share this story here because I also believe in the fact that we're all each other's mirrors, that we reflect each other, that the greatness I see when I hear someone like Alexis speak is exactly the impetus for me to get on this stage. And being here in Vegas feels like a really powerful mirror because I can see that this whole city is going through a rebirth and is emerging triumphant. So all of these things that I'm talking about that are really personal to me are actually part of a much bigger story, and that's what We Are the XX is. We believe in the banding of arms. We believe in the building of community and coming together in the power of words and taking ownership of the language we use to talk about who and what we are as women, as leaders, and as people. And we very much believe that feminism is a statement about humanity, equality, and unity. And so with that, I want to say that I am proudly a feminist. My guess is that so are you. I believe that now is our time and that this is our word and that We Are the XX is an open invitation for you to get on board. So that's my story.
Any questions?
I can't actually see.
All right, you're done.
Why the name the XX?
So the question was why the name We Are the XX, which actually has kind of an interesting story behind it. So because I was going through a divorce, naturally the first thing I wanted to do was get tatted up. I feel like that was appropriate. And so I was thinking about what I could kind of get behind to be permanently on my body, and I landed on these two X's. And the reason for that is because, obviously I have a huge heart for women and two X's, female chromosome, all of that. So the statement literally means we are the women. But I also think that the X's are really sexy. I think that X's are often used as a placeholder, so they're these great things where you get to assign meaning to them. And so that's kind of everything that we're about. Like, yes, we're the women, but this is a movement for all of us, and it's a statement about defining and redefining over and over and over again who you are and what you are and how you present yourself to the public. And actually, one of the first things that we're going to do to invite people to be a part of it is around the X's. So we're going to get legitly tattooed. You all don't have to do that. But what we are going to ask people to do is either put false tattoos on or write on themselves the 2 X's, take a photo, and tell us why they're a feminist. And they can submit it to us. We'll share that content, put it on Instagram, do all that stuff, because we say it in kind of our mission statement. Our voice is only as powerful as yours. So if it's just us talking about it all the time, we're not really doing much. So we want to know why all of you all believe in this, and that's one way that you can join us. So.
Could you talk a little bit about what you plan to do programmatically with We Are the XX?
What do you mean programmatically?
What are some of the events you're trying to organize, or how are you trying to bring to?
Sure. Well, so the question was, what are we trying to do programmatically? What are we trying to organize? What are the events? Basically, what are the long legs of this project? So to begin with, it's content-based. Cassidy had already started a dinner series, which we will certainly weave into this project, about bringing leaders and future leaders together to have conversations. We are presently putting together an advisory board for feminist.com. This is a collective of women that will tap in our community to weigh in on issues that are prevalent to this topic. The campaign that we're talking about, we will be blogging and creating media content. And that's kind of what we got for now, but we're open. So.